In terms of instruction, this is not about NAPLAN results solely. This is not about driving learning intentions solely. Rather, this is about us giving each one of the students across our schools, so over 120,000 young people, the opportunity to flourish. And I think we've listened, asking our staff, where are you? What do you want? How can we help more? And we've served up those results openly and transparently, and I think vulnerably. And most important, we then started to work our way through what teachers have been asking for. We have 12 or 13, at times nearly 14,000 teachers. The capability in that mass of people is extraordinary. So the Better Together story for me is what's so important.
Welcome to the Flourishing Podcast, where we shine a light on the people, the processes, and the practices that are shaping Catholic education in Melbourne. It's a really good opportunity for us to help drive the implementation of both of our visions, the vision for instruction and the vision for engagement. And we invite you to join us on that journey as we interview different influencers that impact that journey. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Ed Simons. He's the Executive Director at Max. And what we get the opportunity to do today is think about how our visions are being enacted. We'll think about the successes of 2025, but we're also going to look ahead to 2026 and think about where our journey is taking us as we strive towards our 2030 strategy. Ed brings a unique perspective. We're thinking not only about our education policies, but we're looking at how our system is led. We're looking at the transformation journey we've been on, and we're looking at the future-focused thinking as we move towards that strategy goal. So whether you're a teacher, a leader, or system staff member, I'm sure you can find something to take away from today's podcast. Ed, welcome to the Flourishing Podcast.
Great to be here, Danny.
Thank you for being our very first inaugural guest.
Absolute pleasure.
I think before we begin, we need to start with the elephant in the room, though. We're obviously both Englishmen. And as we record this, I'll be very open with our podcast audience. The Ashes is underway. And if you're anything like me, Ed, I am considering deflecting to the Australian national support.
I've actually started playing cricket as a result. First time in a long time, but playing with my oldest son and enjoying the opportunity to recreate some of those special Ashes moments myself.
Have you got Freddie Flintoff in mind here?
No Freddie Flintoff. No, but so a lot of fun for everyone to follow it.
No, fantastic. And I suppose that's kind of links to my very first point, is that we are both Englishmen. We both do work in education. And if you're anything like me, you were probably influenced by your parents and kind of onboarding into that journey. My mum used to be a teacher back in England, and I always think back to the enjoyment she always had. She'd come home, smile on face, telling me stories about her day. And I'd compare that to other parents, compare that to what my dad was doing, and never quite had that same enjoyment. And that certainly inspired me to enter the education realm.
Yeah.
Were you influenced in a similar way by your parents?
Yeah, I was. And I think so many of us in education, are so influenced, be that by a family member or by an inspirational, teacher or educator that we've had ourselves. Funny we start with cricket because, childhood memories for me is with mum and dad both being teachers, playing cricket at home over those long summer holidays, and that sense of being a nuclear family when, acknowledging that many professionals don't get that time and space with their children during the year. So I was influenced in a number of ways, like you, sort of reflect on the joy and the sense of purpose and the vocation which education as a profession gave mum and dad and other family members, a sister who's teaching and other members of extended family, but also conscious at those sort of mealtime conversations at home growing up of how hard the job was, and the challenges of it, the difficulties that came across their working days. So inspired through them, but always conscious to how hard it is at the classroom coalface.
Absolutely.
And that certainly influences my thinking. It's been a while since I've been teaching in a classroom, a while since I've been school-based in terms of leadership. But the opportunities that education can provide, as from a staffing perspective, as well as our focus on the kids, but never too far from my mind, and I know other colleagues, is the challenges that come with the day-to-day hopes and joys and difficulties in the classroom and the staff room.
Absolutely. And I suppose, do you have that grounding where you still connect with your sister? Does she still tell you stories about the classroom behaviours?
She's phenomenal, a far better teacher than I ever was. And what works for her and colleagues in England now, and sort of the education tides and currents that flow through education on the other side of the world. We're obviously influenced by those, but encouragingly, I also feel that Australia's at a place now where we'll be influencing other countries in terms of their approach, and we'll probably get onto part of that in terms of the chat around vision for instruction and engagement.
Yeah, but it's certainly a really exciting time. And I think when we reflect on the journey we've been on over the last 2 years since the release of the vision for instruction, and the momentum that's built over such a short period of time, is that something that you've noticed and kind of been aware of the whole time, or is it something you reflect on and consider as it happens?
Good question. Obviously, absolutely intentional and led by colleagues across schools and the office that have done a mountain of work with so much capability. I'm always conscious when we open up on discussions around vision for instruction, vision for engagement, and others that we can go down a rabbit warren which isn't always helpful. In terms of instruction, this is not about NAPLAN results solely. Mm-hmm. This is not about driving learning intentions solely. Rather, this is about us giving each one of the students across our schools, so over 120,000 young people, the opportunity to flourish. And we now know that will be best achieved through evidence-based practice. That's an approach that many of our teachers and many of our schools have been taking for many years. But what I'm so excited about is the dedication of so many of our colleagues across the organisation who are now rowing in a similar direction together. But with that momentum, also collectively feel that we're still at the beginning of the journey.
Absolutely.
And Max 2030 has, set us a horizon in time. The world will be turning well beyond 2030, but we're going to be sharpening up our expectations of what we hope we can achieve by then over the coming while, certainly through 2026. And that gives me hope that momentum can continue to build.
Well, let me talk you through some of the big achievements across 2025, particularly in the realm of working towards supporting schools with the vision for instruction. And you made some really good points there about building momentum as a system and working alongside our schools and our leaders. And there's been a real appetite from schools since the launch of the vision for all the professional learning offerings that are put in place to support with that. And I think that shows that there's a real knowledge and understanding of the science of learning now and the momentum that's bringing, but also the drive to improve and also help those student outcomes, which, as you mentioned again, is the bottom of the kind of the last thing we're thinking about. The outcome's really important, but all that other work that goes with it.
The ingredients have to be right.
What does that suggest to you about kind of the effects of both of those visions since they've been released?
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't there? A huge amount achieved, huge amount of generosity and capability in those achievements. But I'll call out not through glass half empty, but through realistic and some things we haven't quite hit in the way that we'd wanted to. That's just the reality of organising and operating the large system that we collectively make up. The reflection is wow, what a mountain of work delivered by highly capable people. As you would know, so much of the work we've intended to be designed by teachers, for teachers, by our own people, for our own people. So there's a deep connection into where we are today, where our capabilities are, where our areas for improvement are. So I think we are binding together more that sense of coalface school and central office and walking alongside together. Not perfect, but certainly momentum being built. And I think we've listened. Ultimately, when I think back to some of the early work, this was crucially formed through a number of mechanisms, but one being an enormous teacher survey, asking our staff, where are you? What do you want? How can we help more? And we've served up those results openly and transparently, and I think vulnerably as an office. And most important, we then started to work our way through what teachers have been asking for. So the capability across the organisation is extraordinary. Obviously, with approaching 20,000 staff, that means we have 12 or 13, at times only 14,000 teachers teaching at any day of the week, supported by central office staff. The capability in that mass of people is extraordinary. So the better together story for me is what's so important. This is not office knowing best, and it's not always schools and classrooms knowing best. Rather, there's a vulnerability to learning together, being curious, acknowledging what's current best practice, and not making that up for ourselves in our context, but using research, using the evidence, and then contextualizing that to each one of our settings. So it's an enormous amount of progress. It can be served up and felt as an enormous amount of change for some people, and that brings the challenges that we'd all be alert to and aware of in our own working capacities around change. I'm hoping increasingly, and I'm certainly using less the notion of transformation or reform, And I think we're getting in the flourishing learner space to the sense of ongoing improvement, driving at excellence. Excellence, a word that isn't used as much still in K-12 education in Australia as I think it should be. When I think back to arriving here 15, 20 years ago, a word that in some quarters is almost sort of shied from. We demand excellence in the way that we educate our children holistically, academically, spiritually, pastorally, socially, etc. So I think we're beginning to set those targets. It's something that classroom teachers and schools have long done, but we're doing that now as a single body. And by charting and recording and celebrating the successes of, for example, Vision for Instruction, Vision for Engagement, obviously launched later, but with really impressive early momentum already, we can, to your point, start building out success stories and roadmaps for success around RE curriculum, around digital technology, which is going to be a huge piece of work over the coming years. So progress underway, and because of the early success and green shoots there, I feel confident, and I hope others can, about the coming years ahead at Max.
Yeah, and you make some excellent points there about the realities of being in education and the kind of ever-growing pathways you can take to support it. I suppose education is almost like a microcosm of society,
Right.
and you've picked up on points there about technology and the impacts of that. The new laws, regulations around social media will be a massive component of that as well. Research you mentioned as well, and obviously with research we're really lucky in education. It's such a well-researched profession, and that can come with its challenges as well. How do you think we navigate that? Because there's so many views, points, perspectives that have influenced what we've done, but also will continue to influence what we might do.
I think one reflection would be we do need to look at some key data points to acknowledge how effectively, collectively, the education landscape in Australia over the last 10 years has moved. And the stark reality, which we've called out internally across principals, across system leaders for a number of years now, is that our kids are no happier. Attendance at school is declining. So those social and emotional key data points have been tracking in the wrong direction. Range of reasons. We could go to COVID. We could go to many other social pressures. But in that context, that sense of well-being and connection and belonging has led to challenges in our staffing cohort as well, attraction, retention, development of staff. And that's not a space that we have been able to operate in the way that I would hope we'll be able to moving forward as we evolve as Max. Max only 5 years old. But in those social contexts, neither too has our academic performance. And across the country, the degree that we want to add weight to standardized tests, be them national or international, but there isn't a foothold that suggests at system level we've been making the progress that the level of funding ought to demand. So in that context, research is so crucial, but many of those decisions over the last 10, 15, 20 years in the education landscape in Australia have been research informed. I just think that we need to be holding ourselves account to be assessing that research and being confident that we are backing that is most evidence-based in terms of school improvement, around student improvement, about student wellbeing, about student learning outcomes. So the reflections on research are we will always be informed. We need to be informing the research ourselves. But I think ultimately we need to be sharper at having the goals of the outcomes for an organisation such as ours more starkly in mind. So we are driving towards performance. We're driving towards an outstanding education system, and we're doing that within the Catholic context that we operate within.
So you've talked a lot about the benefits of both the visions, and you've talked about our position within not only the system but within the country, within the world globally, in terms of how we've managed to lead the way in some respects for driving system change across a number of schools, a huge number of schools though, and the very beginnings of it. If there was one kind of intention you could set for 2026 then to enable that growth to not only continue but also to expand to support the social pressures that you've already realised, what is it that we could all be doing as educators then?
Yeah, it's a big question, and unless for me to say the one or 2-3 things, more I guess a sense of mindset and encouragement. I think accountability will continue to be a big play in 2026 for Max. Where are we? Can we continually improve to get better in the best interest of students? With the phenomenal work around engagement and instruction, how do we both solidify that work and continue to expand it? Those two crucial hallmarks of both vision for instruction and engagement being access and equity. So how are we ensuring greater consistency of approach across 300 schools, but recognizing the need for individual context, in each classroom and setting. Individual context based on the student, I think, more so necessarily than the geography of the school. I often reflect on there with people when we moved over from Perth 4 years ago now. Our 3 kids, primary age kids at the time, could have landed in one of many different Catholic parish schools. The unique identifier for the way they're educated is the child more so than the school or the setting. So I think we're building up the ingredients for how to support staff to educate all children in the best possible way, regardless of which school they're attending. But I think it's momentum, and the key for 2026 is how we continue to build momentum, how Office continues to demonstrate that it's walking alongside rather than out in front, and a determination that we are still at an early part of a 2030 Max strategy journey. Yeah. And at times, both for the Office and for schools, we know that mountain, face will get, sharper and more difficult, and hopefully times for it to sort of even off a little bit. So 2025 was a big year, significant pressure, significant amount achieved. So I think it's working out the rhythms of the year through the 4 school terms and how Office and school can continue to work more effectively in that space.
Do you think there's a need then maybe to simmer expectations as we work towards 2030? There's this idea that momentum will always build, or we should be prepared for moments where that falls off.
It has to fall off.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's good. And I reflect on that at the Flourishing Learners Conference, which was 2 or 3 days when teachers and school staff could get together into a conference space. And it was hard work. It was intentional work. There was a lot of learning taking place. But the air around that learning had one of hope and optimism and forward facing. So I think it's even through the course of the working year how we can find moments when the work can feel different. So I think that's one thought. I think ultimately what we're talking about though is organizational culture. So it was only first time in 2025 that we've taken the pulse in regards to principal Have Your Say survey, something that we've been doing for 3 or 4 years in the Office. And that has given us some crucial insights into how principals regard their roles, how they regard the work and support of the Office and regional offices. But importantly, when we look at our own central staff, where we are and how we're turning up to work and our perspectives, there's a lot to do there. And ultimately, we can talk about strategy, but if we haven't got the right people with the right mindsets, then it all becomes really hard.
Absolutely.
It was about a week or 2 ago that someone sent me a book off the back of a conversation that we were having. So when I talk about those ingredients and what might 2026 look and feel like for time, the risk is it all just increasingly becomes busy.
Yep.
And it's a word that we all have on our sort of in the tips of our tongue so often in terms of the working week, from classroom teachers, through to all of our colleagues across the organisation. And busy can be really good and constructive, but it can also be busy work. And we know that sense of the sort of flywheel spinning but not getting anywhere. So this book that I was recently sent, which has really captivated me just in the last few weeks, is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Not a brand new book. I think it's been out for a few years. But the notion around hurry and busyness within our own, perspectives as a faith organisation, but also the busyness of life and secular life, how we might operate the flow of Max in a way and in an appropriately professional way that at times might be countercultural. Okay. So how do we celebrate? How do we pause? How are we still? How in our context do we ensure prayer, not just for students but for staff? How are we operating a school system that has Catholicity at the heart of it, which seeks to support those of our faith and all faith or no faith to experience learning and work in a way that most organisations can't offer?
Does that have to be harnessed by the organisation? I'm thinking of some of our young teachers,
Yeah.
many graduates,
Yeah.
2026 will be no different. And I think about the rate that teachers are dropping out of the profession, and a lot of that exhaustion and that kind of sense that the work just never stops.
Yeah.
Is that applicable to them, or is it more so about how those schools are being led?
Yeah, no, I think it is applicable to all. How do we carve out that space ourselves? How need to schools do that for their own staff rooms, and how do individuals do that? But what calls to mind, therefore, goes back to heart of vision for instruction and more, increasingly vision for engagement, where we're demonstrating international best practice, evidence-based research. So spend less time considering that. Use the classroom resources and range of other materials that we can now provide to you. Use them as they are, tailor them up for your own needs. But let's get wiser and more determined to use our space and our time and our effort and our resources in ways that maximizes outcome. And I think as an organization, there's enormous opportunities for that. Digital will be one moving forward. I'm excited about that space, learning from well beyond education as to how other leading organizations do that. But specifically, how will we be better at using our resources, the phenomenal talent that we've got right across the organization, and the time that we have, which is so limited, to craft out the ability for our students to flourish.
Ed, I'm a man of routine, and earlier on I gave you a list of 2025 initiatives. I have to give you a small list now of 2026 initiatives, just because it makes me feel better about it. We've done so much work already, as I mentioned, with some world-renowned experts, Carl Hendrick, Tom Sherrington. They're coming back again in 2026, Brilliant. By the way. And I think that's a continuation of the work they've already led us through. Yeah. And also, we're ready for next steps now, as we always are. We're looking to move. We're churning up the research that's out there. Yeah. We've got our walkthroughs coaching initiative, which is being taken up really widely by primary and secondary schools. Yeah. Pilot group starting early 2026. 2 more cohorts throughout the rest of the year. Again, there's that desire to lean into the research that exists, the pedagogy and the practices that are working well, but then also to be able to keep that momentum moving within the school and their processes and policies. Beyond flourishing learners and our specific team, the introduction of Max Learn is a huge initiative. Yeah. And I suppose that's centralizing the professional development across the system is a real focal point of the movement that we're you've talked earlier on about organizational development moving together as one, and that's going to be a huge cog. Yeah. And then, of course, just the array of other PR. I wish I could read the whole list out. I know that time is of the essence here. There's so much on offer. Yeah. When you think about this time next year, what do you think you'll be reflecting on by this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. We know a huge amount will have been achieved, as it always is in a system such as ours. The professionalism, the dedication, the effort from teachers and school staff right across the organisation, and the support that Central can provide. So that's a given. What I hope in 12 months' time we'll be able to articulate is the growing sense of us doing this together, commonality of approach, sophistication of how that's being led in a bespoke way in individual settings, sense of ongoing excitement and celebration around some of our standardized assessment data, sense that school staff begin to increasingly recognize that their immediate staff room that they're a part of is always going to be their community and where they feel that they can learn and grow and flourish as adults, but increasingly networks of learning at all levels and roles across the organization. But ultimately, it comes down to students, whether through them or through their parents and caregivers, that are telling us that they feel that Max schools within each of the settings that we provide are giving them an outstanding education. One where they can experience ongoing growth within Catholic faith, and in other settings where they're introduced to faith for the first time and grow in their curiosity, and one therefore where parents are increasingly choosing our schools as the place that they want to send their children because they think this is where they'll get the most outstanding education. And I hope, as I can do now, that we reflect and celebrate on the hard work and the progress that it's leading to.
Thank you so much, Ed, for those thoughts. I think quite inspirational in the sense that we're working towards an organisational change, and it's that continuing shift. We never stand still in education generally, but that notion of never sitting and reflecting and stopping. We need to keep moving, and we need to understand that there's going to be some ups and downs along that journey. So to wrap things up, what we want to know on this podcast is what is influencing you, and you've talked about a book that's influencing you at the moment. Let's think about people. What person is influencing you most at the moment, and what is it about them that is going to help guide your thinking through 2026?
Yes, so many, and get the chance to meet and say hello to so many people within the organisation throughout the year, through school visits and many meetings, and meet people external to the organisation. Someone that I haven't met this year, but perhaps is influencing me both in terms of his leadership, but particularly in regard to one of his key early pieces of writing would be Pope Leo. So at exec team level here at Max board level, but I know right across the organisation alongside us, we're reflecting on and deeply considering the sort of groundbreaking document that he recently released called Drawing New Maps of Hope, which speaks, it is a document around Catholic education. It's not long, it's perhaps 8 or 10 pages long. I'd encourage everyone to grab a copy of it and have a look. It speaks to so many of the topics we've spoken on this discussion, and describes education at the local level, the national level, the international level from a Catholic education perspective as constellations. And I love that sense of how are we as individual stars in classrooms, across schools, across systems, across countries and beyond, linking up learning and best practice, sharing that, celebrating that, recognizing that the issues that we lean into every day are very similar to those that others across the Catholic education, indeed education landscape, do also. He speaks about the use of AI. He speaks about the beauty that a curriculum should offer its kids. So given his role, but also the way that he's commenced in leading our global church, and in particular the language and intent of that document, he'd be my key influencer at the moment.
I can understand the influence there. And you mentioned constellations there. So you're the star of our podcast today, Ed. Whilst you've got the mic in front of you, is there anything else you want to say to our Max audience?
Yeah, well, firstly, well done on this. This is a great initiative, and looking forward to seeing this grow and flourish, and with some more interesting guests, over time. So looking forward to seeing this great idea and a great way for us to bring people together and learn together. So thank you. And on that spirit of thank you, that's where I'd love to end up. I mean, what a year. So sincere thanks from myself. It's a humbling thing to say, but that thank you to almost 20,000 colleagues of ours who I know have lent in and at times when they're not always recognised, gone above and beyond to support each one of our students. That's what is the secret sauce of Catholic education. So yeah, the closing message is one of gratitude, one of a sense of hope into 2026, and one where, to your point, I think the dial has shifted. It will continue to. That's experienced in different ways for different reasons by people. But I'm really excited what the next few years can bring for Max.
Yeah, and thank you, Ed, as well for joining us today and sharing that insight as well. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, plenty more to come, plenty more amazing guests to come. As Ed said, hopefully some more entertaining guests as well. But as we move forward, please do subscribe to the Flourishing Learners Learning Hub on YouTube and keep an eye out for more of our videos, more of our podcasts, and hopefully more inspiration for all of us as we move forward as an organisation. And so until next time, keep flourishing.